Well, welcome back to the Krueg Show, everybody. Where's the band? Where's the band? There we go. All right. Saturday night, Game 2 of the World Series officially in the books. Astros even up the series with a 5-2 win in Game 2, going back to Philadelphia. It's already been a very entertaining World Series. Joining us tonight on the live stream, of course, Dan Coccimilgio is back. Ryan Smith will be back in the house. But former Dodger general manager and former Giants assistant general manager and the good friend of the show, Ned Colletti, is back with us. Ned, good to see you.
Hey, it's been too long, gentlemen.
It has been too long. It has been too long, but we love catching up with you. What have you been doing? How's your summer been?
How has my summer been? Well, I went and I taught in London in the month of July. I think I've been on since then.
Yeah.
For Pepperdine. I've been teaching a couple days a week, and you and Ryan were kind enough to give us a tour of the 49er facility one day and come on for an hour and a half and answer some great questions of our students about the media and about doing radio and podcasts. And then scouting for San Jose. Been up to San Jose a few times and been through Southern California doing some junior scouting too for them. And so got a lot going on.
Well, it's good to see you. We're glad to have you here to talk a little baseball postseason, a little World Series, and then also we want to talk about Aaron Judge and the Dodgers and the Giants and free agency and all the conjecture. We're hearing lots of exciting talk connected to both those clubs, and I think the next month or so is going to be absolutely riveting. But why don't we start with the World Series, because there was a stat floating around yesterday I'm sure you know it well at this point, that nobody had blown a 5-run lead in the World Series since, and sadly for Dusty Baker, he's involved in both. Last night, or in Game 1 last night, the Astros had a 5-0 lead. Philly came back, tied it, and won it in the Real Muto bomb. And take Game 1, and nobody had coughed up a 5-run lead in the World Series since the Giants against the Angels in the 0-2 World Series. When I saw that, I just, oh my goodness. Let's go back to that night, 2002 World Series, Game 6.
As Joe Davis started to talk about losing a 5-run lead, I was hoping that they weren't going to say 2002 was the last time, because may have been the most painful 2.5 innings of my 40-year career. 5-0 lead, Russell Ortiz pitching great. I just happened to see Russell this past summer at a charity event, and we talked about it for a minute, talked for about 45 minutes, probably a minute or less on that night. Had a lead, pitching great, and then we lost it. We lost it with 3 in the 7th and 3 in the 8th, and you could just feel the momentum going the other way. And Scott Spezio hit that big 3-run home run off Felix Rodriguez. Not that I remember it, like on the 8th pitch, all fast, no sliders,
Right.
Into that little, I can still see Reggie Sanders going back to that little wall between the foul pole and the bullpen in right field, and just painful. And there's probably nothing worse in sport than being on the road with a chance to win it all in a Game 6. I don't care what the sport is, and losing a lead and then having to play the next day in that city. And that's what we had to do. I think we got a 1-0 lead. And I think maybe Sean Dunston may have homered in Game 7 to lead, give us a run in the first. And we lost 4-1 and really weren't in the game, even though it was a tight game. Painful. I don't know. I probably have other words I could use, but to keep it clean, I'll just say painful.
Yeah, painful for everybody. And people roasted Dusty after that, fairly or unfairly, justly or unjustly. I thought there were some things that he did wrong. Obviously, I took him to task for it on postgame, whatever that means. But, the one that always got me was Russ Ortiz leaving the mound, Dusty calling him back to the mound with the nation watching and flipping him a ball as a souvenir. And, I remember after that World Series was over, Bob Agnew, the program director at KNBR, said, "Hey, we want to do a whole retrospective look back at this series, and we want to take the whole next month and because the KNBR had gotten monster ratings for the World Series, and they wanted to continue those ratings. So he said, "Hey, Krueg, I want you to do this. I want you to go. We got the Giants PR to help us. We got the Angels PR to help us. We want you to interview all these different people that were involved with this series, and we're going to replay every single game of the playoffs, including the World Series. And in the World Series, we're going to intersplice all your interviews of these people, and it's going to be great." I'm like, sounds great. So I went and talked to like Scott Spezio and Alfredo Griffin and Mickey Hatcher. And I actually called these people up a couple weeks after they won the World Series and asked them about these moments. So it wasn't like, this is just what I suspect. Scott Spezio told me that when Dusty flipped the ball to Ortiz, that he was on the bench, didn't see it, but that Mickey Hatcher saw it and went ballistic and started telling her, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And Alfredo Griffin started making a big deal about it on the bench. And then I said to Spezio, "Did that add to your guys' resolve to come back?" And he's like, "Absolutely." So,
yeah, I had heard the same thing. I had heard that.
Dusty should have flipped Valdez the ball tonight with a 5-run lead.
Ran through the dugout, the conversation, and then it just changed the whole game. And also, Robbie Nen, I think, came into that game, and he had
physical problems.
He had given everything he had, and there just wasn't much left. But they started putting it to us, and you can always tell when momentum is sliding out the door. And boy, it ran out the door that night.
Yeah, I also felt that night that there was something wrong about the way some of the things that were going on in the Giants. Jeff Kent with the fist pump and Bonds and Kent in the dugout, chest bumping, and it's like, I don't know. I just all those things bothered me in hindsight. But I also sat there and watched the Spezio Fifi Rodriguez battle, and it was a battle. And I remember saying at one point, "I don't care if he hits it out, just don't walk him." And then I think maybe a pitch later he hit it out. so I blame myself. I blame myself.
It's Larry.
Yeah, I blame myself. I will say this, though. I got invited. My little sister was, invited me to this big World Series party. She said, "Oh, you know what? Come to this World Series party." And she's like, "Come on." I'm like, no, I don't want to jinx it. And this and that. They're up 5-0. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go because if this thing unravels, I'm going to ruin your whole party with all, my F-bombs and my anger and I'm just not going to go. And she's like, "All right." Really glad I didn't go. Really glad I didn't go because that was a rough night. And, it's funny. I was just watching a MLB Network Presents thing the other night on the Cardinals of the 80s. And it's a great hour, right? It's a phenomenal hour. And they talking about 85 and how the Denkinger call in Game 6, and that Whitey Herzog basically said to Rick Hummel, who was longtime St. Louis Post-Dispatch Cardinals beat writer, "Hey man, we're cooked here. We're cooked here." Going into Game 7, he just really felt like it was like
it was the same deal.
Did you feel the same way going into Game 7 that it was?
Oh yeah,
you didn't have much of a shot.
He had a chance to win it in 6
on
the road, and then there's very few teams can do that. I think maybe Houston may have done that in 2017. I don't know how many trash cans they had at Dodger Stadium, but I think they may have done it in that series 1, maybe 6 and 7. I can't recall, but
Diamondbacks against the Diamondbacks against the Yankees in 2001. I think got blown away, or was it? Maybe I'm confusing things.
Diamondbacks won in Arizona.
No, they won in Game 7, but did they win Game 6? They might have won Game 6 too, because it was.
I think the Hokies won all those games. I think the home team won every game in that series.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was the Byung-Hyun Kim amazing Yankee comebacks in the Bronx coming out in 2001, 9/11, the whole thing. I remember Dusty, asking, we asked Dusty, why did you go with the righty Levon in Game 7 when the lefties, Zerby, Reeder, and others had really been the only thing that had bothered the Angels lineup the entire time through? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, I felt like if I went with Levon, that Reeder would be a good soldier. He'd go down to the bullpen and I'd have the use of both. I felt like if I went with Reeder, that Levon, that would have lost Levon. And I basically chose Levon so I could have two pitchers instead of one, because if I'd gone with Reeder, Levon emotionally wouldn't have been able to handle it. That was his thing. I thought that was a blatant misread, because I thought that the Angels had struggled. They were so incredible offensively that year, but they struggled at times in that series against lefties. And I was hoping maybe we'd see the lefty, but what can you say? Do you remember your conversations with Sabes after Game 6?
Yeah, not anything I can repeat. And to go back to Game 7.
Did you watch it together in Game?
Oh yeah,
you did.
Oh yes.
Do you remember your vantage point?
We had one suite at Anaheim Stadium. Not sure how many people it held. There may have been 200 Giant fans and us sitting in the suite, and the rest of the place had the Thundersticks going, and it
Rally
was about
and
5,000 to 250. But one of the things that it's almost a premonition. First of all, Kirk Reeder. I was in the game for a long, long time. I don't know anybody with more compete than Kirk Reeder. Not powerful stuff, but as far as compete goes and figuring out your way to maneuver through something, nobody I know was better. But as I stayed in the dugout after BP before Game 7, that first base dugout, and kind of sat there by myself before I went up to through the maddening crowd, so to speak. And Levon came out. Now, here's a guy that if you go back to 97 with Florida, I mean, big time courage. This guy, he was one of the toughest guys, and especially in big games, that you could find in that period of time. And he came out to the dugout before I went out to the bullpen, and he had this look on his face like he wasn't sure. And I remember thinking, oh no, if he's not sure, we got no chance. And that's how it turned out. And it changed everybody's career. I can go back in my career to 84 too, when I was with the Cubs, and the LCS was the best of 5, and we had a 2 games to none lead.
San Diego Garvey
games, and lost that. Had a 3-0 lead in Game 5 with Rick Cutcliffe pitching, who was 16-1 that season and 1-0 in the postseason, and we lost that game 5-3. And then that would have changed my career, my path. And then 2002 definitely changed it. That was my 20th year in the game. And you win the World Series, you may think about other things, and you may think about adjusting and adapting. And I happened to be scouting Anaheim hockey the other night, Anaheim and Tampa, and Bill Stoneman, the GM of Anaheim that year, I always see him at the Honda Center, and I saw him, and we looked at each other, and right away, he looks at me and he goes, "Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about it." And that was like 5 days ago, 4 days ago.
Right.
And,
Wow.
I'm talking about something that happened 20 years ago. And Tim Meade, who was their PR director at the time, I used to always see him, and especially in spring training, have their World Series ring on. And I'd say, you should probably not wear that, But anyway,
would Dusty have been there in 2003 if you guys had won that Game 6?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but think of the history that, he's had a phenomenal career, and I pull for Houston at this stage, really because of him. I told him a year ago, for the first time in my life, I'm an Astros fan because of you. I just, no matter what team he would be with. But, he had a chance to bring the Giants its first World Series in the city of San Francisco as the manager. Not blaming him. I mean, there's so many different things inside a game that transpire. And then the next year he's in Chicago, and you got the Bartman situation in Game 6 of the LCS against Florida. If they get through that and they go to a World Series and they happen to win the World Series, think about his 2 years of 02 and 03. Giants first time ever on the West Coast World Series, and then the Cubs the first time since 1908. You're talking about massive history right there. But
amazing. It was an amazing time. It really was. Not to mention, and we should not be left, without mentioning this, that you guys came out of 2002, went from Dusty to Felipe, and won 100 games. Yes. And I'll say this, and I'm just saying this totally as an unbiased observer. I thought maybe the 3 or 4 best managing jobs I've seen in my life was Dusty 93 before you got there, first year with Barry, just every right move. The first year, Roger Craig in 86 when Giants were just trying to establish themselves, and he kept pitching out and just amazing. I mean, just an amazing feel. And then Felipe in 2003 was absolutely every right button. You guys won 100 games. There was a lot of turnover that year too. There was a number of different guys.
Jeff Kent had gone. David Bell had gone. We had to trade Russell Ortiz because
Jose Cruz came in, right?
Yeah. A lot of different things went on.
But you guys still won, I think, 103 games. Is that the year that Steve Finley?
Was
that the Finley home run? Okay.
Yeah, that was 05.
So that was the Marlins. That was the Marlins beating you guys.
Yes, it's when
JT Snow
at the plate.
Yeah,
thrown out by 20 feet.
Which was very fun. I'll say this, and I love Sabes, and I think Sabes is unbelievable, and I would argue to the death that he's a Hall of Famer. But in that particular series, Giants Marlins 2003, I thought that he made a mistake on the roster. You guys had a bunch of lefties: Jason Christensen, Zerby, Fultz, others, and you had a Marlins team that only had Hollingsworth and Juan Pierre from the left side. And they had it. You guys had traded for Eric Young that summer, and Eric Young was left off the playoff roster because you guys just couldn't pick which lefty you wanted to go with. You went with all the lefties. And then JT Eric Young in that spot probably could have pinch run for JT Snow. That was not the 15th. That was the 9th. That was the thought I had after that game, was like, oh my God, this team traded for Eric Snow and left him off the roster.
I think I was maybe in 18 postseasons out of 40. Not bad. When you only get 3 or 4 teams that go a year from each league. That discussion leading up to that series, the Eric Young discussion, was the most heated discussion I've ever been in.
Wow.
We put the roster together. I can still see it in my mind's eye in the little conference room off the manager's office and off the GM office in the Giants home clubhouse. And it was as heated as any roster conversation I've ever been through. People wanted pitching. Nobody ever wants to go with less pitching.
Right.
But there was a strong stance that we had enough pitching. And what we really needed to do was have some speed, because we did not have a team that could do what we needed to do in that last inning.
Yeah. So we're looking back at 02 and 03. Let's talk about this series. What do you think of this matchup? I like Houston to win this series, but man, Philadelphia's got a little magic for sure. And from what I've heard, now I haven't watched tons of Phillies up to this point in the playoffs, but I hear that the atmosphere there at Citizens Bank is just off the charts. I can't imagine that this Astros team, with all these guys who have been there and done it, and Dusty, who's also been there many times, is going to be impacted by that. But it is Philly. It's the most verbal, angry fan in America. I mean, right? I mean, heck, you worked as a sports writer there.
Oh, yeah.
It's a verbal, angry, frustrated fan base that just lets you have it. They think they're part of it. You're not going to convince them otherwise. And heck, I think one of the greatest accomplishments was watching the Giants go in there and beat them in the playoffs. Thank you, Javi Lopez. Thank you, Juan Uribe.
Yes.
But I thought that was an incredible series by Boch and the staff to get through that thing. But give me your thoughts on this matchup, Astros and Phils.
Well, it's Philly is unique, and there's one way. But you know what? I got to ask you something, Larry. You've never sat down by the old visiting bullpen at AT&T or SBC Park or Pac-Bell Park when the Dodgers are there. You've never sat down there. That's down there too.
I've sat down there before, but I mean the Philly fan is like a relentless fan that kind of I think Giants fans know they're not part of it, where I'm not sure that the Philly fans know that they're not part of it.
Well, there's one thing any team can do to stop that, and that's
get a lead.
Early.
Yeah.
Score early and take them out of the game. That's the best way to counteract it. You can counteract it, but you got to score early. You can't let the game sit in the balance, and you can't let them get an early lead, because then it does get tough. But again, fans don't play the game, and these guys are all professional. They all play in different environments that are rugged. Yeah, Philly probably the most rugged. But I can't think that at Yankee Stadium with the old Red Sox series or Fenway Park with the old Yankees series would be any rougher. But the way out of it is, hey, you know what? You score some runs and you get them out of the match. My two LCS teams in 08 and 09 that one of our series ended in LA, the other ended in Philly. And we had a lead in that game in the ninth inning. In game 4, we ended up losing it in 5. Jimmy Rollins hit a 2-run triple to beat us in a walk-off.
I remember that.
And, it's they're not watching their phone; they're watching the game.
You forgot to give thanks to the MVP in 2010, Larry, Cody Ross.
Cody Ross,
MVP.
Cody Ross. Wasn't he a deal to block? I believe he was a deal to block the Padres. They didn't want the Padres to get him, so they claimed him. Padres said, "Up, tag, you're it." And then he becomes the NLCS MVP. And the funny thing is that my friend Roxy Bernstein, who I've known for years, and he had been the voice of the Marlins right in that same period. And I remember asking him at the time, "What do you think of Cody Ross?" And he's like, "I'll tell you, Larry, he's one of the streakiest players I've ever seen. But man, if he gets in a good streak, wow, he can carry you." And I'm thinking, wow, think about that for a second. Cody Ross can carry you. But there's a little truth. There was a little truth in it. And sure enough, he got hot. And Ned, you've seen it many times. Brian Doyle, if you want to go back to the 7th. Yeah,
not many people listening are going to remember Brian Doyle, but yes,
Brian Doyle
came over from the Twins, right?
Well, he was the Yankee in the Yankees Dodgers. 77, 77, 78 in that run. Wasn't he part of that? But I mean, I think of Mark Lemke, and I think of some of these guys that, for you guys, Marco Scudero. Just guys that, you just can't get out. All of a sudden you look up and you're like, whoa, we can't get this guy out. David Eckstein in 02.
Go back to 02. You're right.
Oh, God.
Couldn't get him out. That
little midget would get – he drove me crazy.
Well, and that Angels team had 3 or 4 guys like that. Eckstein, Spezio. I mean, they had a bunch of guys like Adam Kennedy. These just guys that just couldn't get them out. But it's amazing watching. I like the Astros. I think the Astros are the better team here. I think they got the better pitching. They got a really nice group with Bregman special and Gurriel special. Tucker's a tremendous hitter. Jordan, this Pena kid, Altuve. I mean, they just got they got a regular group of guys that Dusty puts out there every day, and they got tremendous pitching. And it just seems like I just kind of feel like this is their year. But Philly definitely has a little magic.
Oh yeah, And the ballparks are both built that you can change a game with one swing.
Oh yeah,
Phillies lineup can do
especially
that.
Philly. That is such a Cracker Jacks box park, man.
No, it's a bandbox, total bandbox.
Flies out of there.
What do you think of the fact that Philly pulled the plug on Girardi, went to Rob Thompson, and here they are? I mean, Girardi won a World Series with the Yankees. Girardi went to Northwestern, very smart guy. I think one of the more cerebral managers. But for whatever reason, he wasn't hitting in Philly, and they pulled the plug. They went with Rob Thompson. He's in the World Series. He's 3 wins away from being crowned champion. I mean, that's it. You know what? It's weird, Ned. That seems to happen in baseball. I'm thinking of Jack McKeon with the Marlins, Bob Lemon with the Yankees in the 70s. It's just like that seems like it happens sometimes in hockey and sometimes it happens in baseball where you switch the leader. And maybe, I mean, heck, they pulled McKeon into the dugout in May, I believe. And I think from May on, the Marlins had like the best record in baseball. What do you make of switching bench jockeys in the middle of the year and then having it lead to a World Series?
Well, most of the time when it happens, it's because you believe your team is better than it's played. And, I've had to make managerial moves, but not at that point in time, because you would make a move like that if you look at your team and you see that they're lackadaisical or they're not focused or they're not playing up to really the potential. And you have to be honest with it all the time. You can't say, well, we got to blame the manager, because we have a mediocre team. No, that's not the way to do it. And you got to be sure you've got somebody that can sit in the seat that can do what you're not seeing get done. But a lot of times, I mean, players are really who get managers fired. And most of the time it's because they stop paying attention.
Well, that's a question I had for you on that, Ned. Is that something as a GM, when you have to make that decision, are you getting star player input? Are you talking to people? Or are you just getting a feel from your gut?
Yeah. You watch enough games after decades, you see it, you sense it, you walk through the locker room, you get to feel to it. Asking a player for their opinion, unless you're always going to do it, which is so dangerous, you can't do it. I can't remember ever asking a player.
I mean, do you ever overhear in the clubhouse players,
sure, you do it,
talking,
but you
like
hear that all
lack
the
of
time.
respect, or
you'll hear that all, basically almost all the time, somebody complaining about something, but it's not the words that tell you it's time. It's really how they play. And if they're slow moving, if they're lackadaisical, if they're not paying attention, if they're not following a scouting report and an advanced report, if they're, and it takes a long time, to get to that point.
And I know the Giants had a very successful year, 107 wins, and it was their greatest single season for victories. And, they were riding high coming off that. Then, this year was very disappointing. I was pretty critical. I think both Larry and I were critical of a lot of things with going on with the Giants and Kapler. And we kind of felt like, to me, there were signs of, and I have no idea, but it was just signs of him, players weren't playing up to potential. Defense was one of the worst in the league, where the previous year they were the best. See comments on Twitter from players' wives making like, does this team ever bunt? And, thinking, where's that coming from? Probably shouldn't have been tweeted by the wife, but it was. And, you start to wonder, are players frustrated? So I was kind of thinking, boy, this team, it just didn't seem like it played to its potential. Then I saw Toronto and Philadelphia both fire their managers. And in the case of Toronto, I'm trying to remember, was that Charlie Gibson? Who was that manager? Trying to remember who it was. Moyer or Charlie Montoya. He had just signed an extension in the offseason. So, but Toronto wasn't messing around. They missed the playoffs by a game last year on the last day, and they were playing under their potential. And they let him go. And, they did make the playoffs. So my feeling is an organization like the Giants, who was coming off a great season, why are they like just allowing this team to flounder all year? And, I understand it was a lot of other circumstances were going on, but I have a feeling this year that if Kapler gets off to a slow start, we may see a Philadelphia or Toronto situation in May if the team is struggling.
Danny's hoping for it.
I'm hoping they win, but I just
we hear you.
It'll all depend on what they do in the off season as far as who they sign and all that too. So.
We welcome in Ryan, who's joining us from the mean streets of Orinda. It's dangerous out there. Ryan, can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, hey, Ned. I just went through one of maybe the most uncomfortable situation of my whole life. I went out to my mom's like all her like lifelong friends who are of course like family friends. This was like a big post-COVID Halloween party where everyone met up. So I was going to go just to pay homage for like 15, 20 minutes. By the way, I'm dressed as Jim Harbaugh, and that's so I could wear my headset in case of the live stream. But oh God, I don't know what happened. I think my mom was a little nervous because she brought a first date and she was just so drunk. And so now I gave it the Irish goodbye. It was so uncomfortable.
Well, we're talking a little World Series and we're about to talk a little free agency with Ned. A lot of people in the chat are already asking questions about Aaron Judge. You've heard the Judge rumors, the Giants, Val Ramos. Do you get two really good free agents or do you go get Aaron Judge? The Dodgers are talking about Carlos Correa. The Dodgers are talking about making a big run for Aaron Judge. I've got a connection within the Giants that gave me this little nugget that Judge is likely to come west. And that he's not happy in New York and that there's issues in New York and that he would like to leave and come west. And he'd like to go to the Giants first and the Dodgers second. But my source at least says to me that he's not sure how good of a club the Giants can put together around him next year, and that he's got some questions about Kapler. But he's a Giants fan through and through. He's from Linden. He grew up a Giants fan. I think all things being equal, he'd like to be a Giant. There's a lot of speculation the Giants may offer a monster deal, maybe a 10-year deal for $400 million, which is, I think, the kind of deal that it's going to take to actually blow the Yankees and Dodgers out of the water and to land him. What's your read on the whole situation, Ned? Because in some ways I do understand a pursuit of Judge over others, because the Giants don't just need a right fielder with power. They need a face of the franchise. I need to go spend $1,000 online right now on purchasing tickets. Give me a reason to do it. Oh, Aaron Judge. They need like what Barry gave the club. And you're the guy who signed Barry to two different contracts, both record-setting deals, I believe, or at least huge deals. The first one was definitely record-setting. But what do you make of Judge? How would you compare it to Bonds? When you guys signed Bonds, did you know that, you might not have been involved in the initial signing of Bonds?
No.
But did you guys know that, that the not only does the team necessarily need an anchor and a bus driver type guy in the lineup, but the fans need something to kind of invest in, especially with the Dodgers and Padres being where they're at now. Was that part of the mindset when you went to re-sign Barry, the box office element of it?
To some extent, but he's the best player I've ever seen on a daily basis. So that had a lot to do with it. No matter what the box office would tell you, if he wasn't who he was as a player, it may be a different story. I negotiated two deals. One was a 2-year deal, and then the 5-year deal after he hit 73 home runs. And thanks for the credit, but it wasn't my money.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, what I always find interesting during this period of time and for the next few months is the rumor mill. And I take it all with kind of a grain of salt. Okay. because
Yep.
if you're Aaron Judge or any player of that caliber, or you're the agent, or let's say you're the Dodgers, okay, and I have no inside info, you are going to make it seem like the Dodgers are part of this equation. They may be, they may not be.
Driving up the
But,
price.
but you are going to be able to raise the ante.
Yep.
If the Giants say, we cannot let him get to LA, because and it's important to understand one really key component to this. Agents can talk to other agents about what's going on in the market. Teams cannot do that. So anything you see about so-and-so is interested in so-and-so, or having conversations, whatever, there's no way to know if that's true or false. And so if you're the Giants, you're sitting there and you're going, well, the Yankees, certainly they're going to be involved. Are the Dodgers going to be involved? Are they really going to be involved? Well, you don't know, but you have to probably act like they are. But they could be, in the negotiation world, the stalking horse. They may not even be involved, or they may get involved to raise the ante, so that you got San Francisco not spending 35 for 7, but, to your point, 40 a year times 10. He'll be 41 years old by the time that contract expires. You'd be handicapping that organization probably for the last 3 or 4 years of that deal. $40 million for somebody whose age is the same, So there's a lot of games that go on. And I think it's important that people realize that, it's far less fun to look at it that way than to think your team is involved. And certainly the Dodgers may be involved.
Yeah, Ned, I kind of feel the same way about all the talk, because ultimately it's going to come down to the player. Whatever, he's going to decide where he wants to play. And you could have the best deal. Maybe you beat somebody else, but if he wants to be somewhere else, that's it. The other thing, I have a question for you. As a general manager, when you're negotiating, my feeling is, because Farhan has come up short in many situations, he tends to wait for the best deal at times. If you want a guy, do you go to the agent when it's open door and you can talk to the agent and say, what are you guys looking for? And if we meet your deal, your criteria, will you sign? Do you ever do anything like that? Or do you just
agents
back and forth?
Agents are not necessarily going to tell you what they're looking for, unless the only number you're going to get that is going to be something you could take in the first day or two is something that is so over market.
Right.
Something that is just like, doesn't make any sense. And if, the agent's not going to tell you what the agent wants, he's going to tell you, hey, if they're asking me this and they're serious,
if you want somebody bad enough, do you go over market? Do you go over market if you want somebody bad enough?
Well, what's over market? You don't even know what the market is.
Well, I would think the market's at least starting for Judge 40 annual, whether that be, Ryan proposed,
and you don't know, and all due respect, you don't know.
Yeah. Ryan and I have talked about it, and I kind of like the idea of going 50 for 6 years, give them the $300 million, but then they don't have to worry about those last 3-4 years, as you mentioned, putting a major hole in the franchise.
And I kind of laughed at that because I'm like, man, that is so far above the going rate for the top player in the game that it sounds good, but it is interesting as far as strategy, because like, would you do you want your offer shopped, or do you want them to be committed? And the other factor is, we're hearing that one of the main questions for Aaron Judge might be with the Giants, who else are you going to be able to afford? So you may see the Giants go after and take a real proactive approach to a Trey Turner or Carlos Correa. Anthony Rizzo's name's been floated out there as people that would kind of show Judge's camp that, hey, it's not just going to be you on an island setting breaking Barry Bonds' intentional walk record. It's going to be you in a lineup with, 2 or 3 other guys that you like and have credentials, and you'll be protected. So they may have to make those moves first. But Ned, let's get right to Judge as an individual. 29, coming off a monster year. And you said it. I mean, if you go 10 years, then you're approaching 40. But like, if you were in negotiations representing the Giants, how would you want to play this? How would you? What would you? How you always had an incredible amount of success at seemingly getting to the decision maker and at least not bidding against yourself and figuring out kind of, do you have a shot at all? So like, what kind of dialogue would you want to have? Would that dialogue already have happened? Like, you had that dialogue at the All-Star break, or you had that dialogue second half of the year, or is this all done in the free agent period? Give me your thoughts on the specifics on Judge and like how you view pursuing a player like that this year.
Well, whether it was somebody of that caliber or even less than that, I had a lot of things that I had to uncover ahead of time before I'd ever pick the phone up and talk to the agent. I had a list of probably 12 or 13 different steps I had to take before I would go to ownership, because I never wanted to go to ownership and have the owner ask me a question that I couldn't answer. I never wanted to say, hey, let me look into that and I'll get back to you. I mean, if I'm going in there looking for 15, 20, 25, $30 million, I better know everything there is. So you got your analytics, you've got your scouting, you've got as much undercover work as you can to figure out the real interest. You look at other teams' payrolls, who could really afford to do this? Is that GM and owner, are they like the all hat and no cattle group, that's always going to be talking the big talk, but when you look at what they do, they're never there at the finish line. You got to do all that work ahead of time before you ever get on the phone with somebody. And you do it, you know who's going to be a free agent when in spring training. The class coming out, barring somebody signing in the middle of the season, which doesn't happen all that often. And so, you have your training staff, your medical staff, keep an eye on a player. And sometimes a player may not go on the IL, but maybe they miss him 4 or 5 games in a row, 5 or 6 different times during the season because they got something that's acting up. So, I mean, you keep track of all of
That's a big part of it, huh? The whole due diligence. Like the Giants have Dr. Murray, Dr. Akazuki, and I talked to these guys during FanFest many years, and they said that their job had morphed from being kind of a doctor to almost being like a researcher behind the scenes. That before you're going to invest $20 million in a player, they want to do their due diligence, and there's the internal medical information that's shared, but then beyond that, there's all kinds of deep dives that need to happen as far as, okay, this is the information that we're sharing, but what's the real story? And I remember these guys saying that Sabes used to use them as kind of a, hey, we're not, you're gonna find out if they're medically sound and making some kind of pitch to us, advising us, to either go for this player or stay away from the player. So that just kind of shows how their jobs become more complicated.
Well, it's a key element to it. I mean, you can learn so much, but all of this stuff is long-term attention to detail. You haven't just started looking in the last couple of weeks of the season. In the winter ahead of this, 13 months ahead, 14 months ahead, who's likely to be out there. And you start your due diligence then. And when the season starts, you put people on them, and then you really do a deep dive in it. I had some interest in Prince Fielder in my Dodger days, and I had a scout that I says, you get all your coverage done by the 20th of July, all your teams, all your minor league teams, and the rest of the season, you're sitting on Prince Fielder. He lived in Chicago. The scout could get to Milwaukee easy, travel, would see how people, what they do after games, what they do workout wise, all these different things. And and then we ended up meeting with Prince, who was a wonderful guy. And but you have to do your due diligence to this. You just can't take 2 days and look on the internet or look at stats or look at analytics and look at all these different things and make a decision. No, this is an ongoing process. And to get back to Judge and the Giants, and somebody had asked a question a couple minutes ago. Do you go for 2 players instead of 1, instead of Judge? Candidly, I don't think that the Giants are a player away. I think they're players away. So, the drawing card, I guess there's going to be people who will go watch a team that's a 500 team or below 500 to see Aaron Judge play. I guess that exists. Are they going to go 20 times a year, 25 times a year? I don't know that they do that. So you have to think about that, because you're not just signing him for whatever the number is for 1 year. As you put that line item in for somebody's salary, that changes your dynamic for as many years as you're paying that player. And you got to be aware of that, and sometimes wary of that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ned. They need 3 to 4 players.
Yeah,
impact
this
players.
is going to solve their issues, in my opinion.
The thing that
worse, Dodgers aren't getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just think that they look at the Warriors down the street with stars. They look at what the Padres are doing in the division. They look at what the Dodgers are doing in the division. And I just think that the Giants have 2 problems. I think Danny said it right. They're not, and Ned, they're not 1 player away. We all know they're not 1 player away, but they need to also think about the marketing side, because not only were they a bad baseball team this year, they were an irrelevant baseball team that was really boring and sleepy to watch. And I would say in my entire lifetime in San Francisco, I was born in 70. I started following the team in the mid 70s. They always had a guy. Maybe that guy was Willie McCovey. Maybe the team wasn't great, but they always had a guy, Willie McCovey, Jack Clark, Will Clark, Kevin Mitchell, Barry Bonds. And I don't know, it just seems like this year, this team was filled with minor league names and that nobody knows. Guys that, I'm a hardcore baseball fan. Danny's a hardcore baseball fan. I would say 85 to 90% of Farhan's moves were for players I have never heard of. And this is somebody who has who reads Baseball America, follows the amateur draft, follows baseball on all the levels, and never heard of Stewie Fairchild or Kevin Padlow or any of these guys. And then you watch them for a few days and you realize there's a reason. There's a reason you've never heard of these guys. They're not big league players. They're rearranged. They're just moving guys around on the 40-man for, flexibility reasons and playing the back end of their roster. And that's what Farhan's doing. But I always felt it was interesting when you and I would talk about free agents and you would say to me, Larry, you have no idea the number of players that just won't even consider taking my phone call and playing for the Giants because they don't want to live west. And I'm from San Francisco, and I think California is great, and I love the weather and this and that. To me, it's a great place to live. But there are people, especially if you're playing in the DR or you're from the DR, that maybe you want to be playing for the Marlins or you want to play, for the Nationals or just in that time zone, closer to family and friends, easier to communicate. So that's a big part of it as well, isn't it?
You also got an income tax issue.
Yeah, which is
if you're from the southeast part of the country or you're from Latin America, to come to California, to your point, it's not only a long way to go, but what are you paying? 13%?
Yeah.
What are you paying in Florida?
0.
Nothing. Yeah.
Texas too, right? Texas and Florida.
Every 100 million, you're talking about 13 million.
Yeah.
I don't care how much money guys are making. Nobody wants to lose $13 million.
Oh, no. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I kind of changed my tune when all these reports came out about like Judge. My fan brain got involved. Judge, he's from here. His girlfriend's from here. He wants to be here. But before that happened, I always kind of felt like, okay, Judge to the Giants is just a PR move, which is kind of what Larry's saying. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you really want to run your franchise based off a PR move, especially when you're already making that much money. It's not like they're desperate for money. And I just worry that it's like, it feels almost like the New York Knicks. Like, it's just like anytime a star, shows interest in them, they're just like, oh my gosh, we got to sign this guy. Okay, we signed Jalen Brunson. How does that fix anything? And Judge, I mean, the closest comp I would think is maybe like when Pujols signed with the Angels. And I feel like it's probably going to be pretty similar to that. I mean, Judge has, 4 years where he's hit over 27 home runs. We're going to be 4 years into the deal. He's going to be hitting 270. He's going to be DHing a lot. He's going to have 26, 27 home runs. And then it's still 6 years left on the deal. So that's where, I mean, honestly, my sober take is I would prefer they go a different route.
Let's take your point and Larry's guess at 10 years. How many years are going to be worth 40?
I would say this, though. When it comes to Aaron Judge, when you factor in what I think the impact would be, which would be countless 99 jerseys and about 4,000 to 5,000 a night increased attendance.
What about W's, Larry?
I don't know about W's because I've got to see the rest of the thing built. It's a team sport. But I just think there's a very good chance it would be very difficult for the Giants to sign a bad Aaron Judge contract when you look at the revenue and what's happening with the revenue and how he could impact the revenue. But I definitely don't think it's an automatic that you're going to win. Now, what do you think of Trey Turner? What's your guess on Trey Turner, Ned? Do you think Trey Turner re-signs with the Dodgers, or do you think he so prefers to be East that somebody East makes him an offer and he jumps? Because we're hearing an awful lot in the last 24 hours, Ned, about how the Dodgers are focusing on Carlos Correa. And heck, they could just prefer Carlos Correa. He's that good of a player. But it also could be an indication that Trey has told them he would like to play East. What's your read?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to what I said at the outset of this part of the conversation. To me, most of it's BS.
Exactly. I don't listen to any of this stuff.
You are always, as a player or an agent, you are always going to say, I'm interested. Even if you have zero interest, you are going to say, I'm interested. I'm interested in going back. I'm interested in if the team really wants you, you can say, well, I don't know if I'm going back. I mean, all of these things get played. They get played endlessly through this period of time. So, people say, well, I got to source this, or I got, this going on, or I think this, or I think that. It's all conjecture, and it's just storytelling. We'll know the truth at the end. But until then, it's all nonsense. I've had agents call me about a player, and within a minute I'd say, you know what, doesn't fit here for whatever reason, before we even got to money. And the next day you could read in trade rumors, the agents in the Dodgers have been talking about X player. Yeah, I said no, but that's not in there. Okay. Because when you are a big market team like the Dodgers, and you spend as healthy as they do, and you're as committed as they are to winning, boy, you got, every player would want to say, yeah, the Dodgers got interest in me, but I don't know that's accurate. The Dodgers have interest in probably less than 10 players, but you'll probably find 20 out there that say, oh yeah, we're in conversations, or they have an interest. And that's why, having sat there in the middle of it, and watched what is laid upon the public and the media and all of us, it to me, I never ever believed it unless it all made sense underground.
Sabian and you never had your stuff outed that much, where take an example of a guy, Jim Bowden, let's say, always had his stuff bandied about. So obviously Jim Bowden's talking to a lot of media people. Heck, he is a media person now, so it doesn't surprise me. But when was that like absolutely like the way you and Brian did business? Like before we sit down and talk about this, this doesn't get out? Because your guys' stuff didn't get out, and I'm wondering what you did preemptively to prevent it from happening.
Had a very tight inner circle, and everybody knew that we knew that there was only a few people, probably less than 5, including Peter McGowan and Larry Baer, that knew what we were doing. So, or what we were thinking.
That's obviously the key.
Peter and Larry always knew what we were thinking. And, it was just a very, very small group. And we didn't think airing our business was going to do us any good. Now, from time to time, if we had a competition going on and we didn't really want the player, would we call somebody in the media who we trusted and say, hey, you want to use us? Or even call the agent, you want to use us? Use us. But we ain't going to, obviously we got no interest in it. If it was going to raise the ante and let somebody else overpay for the player. We did that from time to time, but that was, that wasn't like you're referring to it with some other group here, Should we talk, listen, or answer Romo's question?
Yeah, Romo 2001 donates $5. He says, Ned, in your history of signing free agents, other than the size of the contract and the years, what is the next biggest issue that players have when signing with a team? That's a good question.
I think, Romo, that we kind of talked about that a little bit. For players that don't want to live far away from where they grew up, whether it's West Coast players that don't want to go east, or Southeast players, or Northeast players, or East Coast players that don't want to go west, or Latin American players that don't want to go west, that's an issue. And whether I was in one of the cities or the other doing deals, I had to get to that point right away to make sure that they understood where they were going and what it was like. I would tell players, especially like in LA, I told them in San Francisco, you don't necessarily want to live over the bridge because it's going to take your wife or your family a little bit of time to get in for a night game. And in LA, unless you're living in Pasadena, there's really no easy place to live and get to. Yeah, a player can get there, live at 2:00 or 1:00 in the afternoon. But if you're talking about other people in your party trying to get there, you got to be at least aware of that. And so, I had some players that didn't even think about that. And I said, hey, you better think about this segment of it because it's real.
Where did they
be part of your day-to-day?
Where did they typically live in LA? Like Silver Lake, Echo Park-ish?
Pasadena area. A lot of people live there. Some people live in Manhattan Beach, but not many because, it
takes a while.
Ned, did you ever have players say, I'll sign, but with conditions like I want this or that, or I don't like this manager, or I want the fences moved in, or anything crazy like that?
No.
That
they're not going to have that part of the decision making process.
What would you do if you had a couple of star guys come in and say, well, as a GM, and they're like, we're ready to come, but we don't like we don't like the manager per se.
They don't have the again, if you're into it every day, if your manager, to use your point, is an issue. And so you think about that outside of a conversation with a player or an agent. You're already thinking about that. But you can't give people the authority to dictate something like that. Because the problem with it is, where do you stop? Where do you stop?
Right.
If Aaron Judge says, well, this is what I want. I want A, B, and C. I want the fences moved, in and okay. What happens, with the next player you sign? Are you going to make accommodations for that player too? I mean, and when do you stop? How do you can't start it because you can't stop it. And are you going to then not ask the player's opinion on anything of consequence? Because once you start, they may expect it all the time. So it was, to me, it was never part of any conversation I ever had with anybody. If people didn't like the manager, I knew it before somebody told me about it.
How privy are you to the Dodgers situation now? So like Friedman's the GM. And so if he decides he wants Aaron Judge or wants a big time free agent or wants to make a major expenditure, who does he talk to? Or does he have total autonomy, or does he have to answer to somebody in the Guggenheim group? How does the Dodger situation work right now? Is Stan Kasten? Is his voice heard? I mean, who ultimately makes the decisions, do you think, in that organization?
Well, I don't know for sure because I'm not in it, but I can't imagine Stan is not aware of every thought that goes on in every different dynamic. And, when you get to the main issues of what your payroll is going to be, it's probably Mark Walter and other pieces of ownership. That's how it goes. I don't know that there's any general manager in any sport that just can do whatever they feel like doing and have the owner read about it and online the next morning. I don't think that exists. So I think it's, and as far as, maybe they want to reset at some point in time, reset the luxury tax number. They've done that before. If, Mookie's making in the mid 30s, I think. Freddie Freeman is making in the high 20s. Clayton, who knows where, if Clayton's coming back or not and what that number will be. He went from, I think, 32 or 33 to 17, I think, this past year. Do you assign somebody for 35 or 40? Do you have $100 million wrapped up in Aaron Judge and Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts? I mean, 3 iconic players. Probably
you got to make a decision on Bellinger too.
You have $100 million wrapped up in 3 that aren't pitchers. I don't think it's that easy to do for anybody. And I think it takes a lot of thought process and it takes a lot of figuring it out, because Mookie signed for a long time and Mookie's probably got 9 or 10 years left.
Yeah.
Freddie's
what would you do if you had, like, the Giants have a real dilemma here? One of the leaders in their clubhouse, I remember all the years you were here, you used to talk about the guys in the room. The guys in the room matter a lot, and it mattered a lot to you, and it mattered a lot to Brian, and mattered a lot to the managers you had. Brandon Crawford's a very proud player. He's got another year on his deal. He's at the end of his deal. And yet there's Trey Turner, there's Carlos Correa, and there's Xander Bogaerts, and there's a lot of good shortstops out there, and there's a lot of speculation that the Giants may bid on one of those shortstops and ask a guy like Crawford to switch positions, possibly, or maybe they'll go for a Trey Turner and they'll overpay him and put him at second base and let Crawford play his final year with the Giants at shortstop. How would you let that situation play out? Do you talk to the agent? You talk to the player? You talk to like a Wotuses of the world and find out where the player is defensively? Or heck, do you know enough about that watching your, just trusting your own eyesight? And like, what, that would you be concerned about moving a player off of shortstop and saying, hey, Brandon, go play second, go play third, we're going to bring in this guy? Is that a tough conversation to have with a veteran player? And do you have it with the player or with his representatives?
Well, to answer the first part of that, it could be a very tough conversation, or it could be an easy conversation. Depends on who you're talking to, what player you're talking about. Some players' appetite for victory exceeds where they play and what they do. It depends.
Looks like Ned locked up there.
Scouting ahead of time.
Oh, well, you locked up for just a second there, at least on my side. Go ahead, Ned, if you could just go back 30 seconds if you could.
Yeah. I think it's going to be either be a very easy conversation or a very challenging conversation, depending on the player. The player that's the incumbent, depending on what they want to do. A contract doesn't state what position somebody's going to play or where they're going to hit in the order. Okay. Gives you a term, gives you bonuses, gives you.
And in the situation with Crawford, I imagine they already know about Crawford. I wouldn't be surprised if Crawford said, hey, look, it's my last year with the Giants. I want to win. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. If you guys want to, move me over to second, I'm willing, or third. But, don't let me get in the way of having a competitive team. I don't want to have
I would imagine that would be the case.
Yeah.
Yep. I would imagine that would be the case.
A couple more before we let you go. Trey Turner. Yep. What's your thought? You think you think LA is gonna bid on him and try to keep him, or you think he's gonna go somewhere else? And what do you think of him watching him all the time now? You've watched him a lot this year.
I mean, he's got a unique skill set for me because he's got power and he's got speed. And those are rare combinations these days. And he plays in the middle of the field, So I mean, he's in the upper tier of players, in my opinion. Again, not to be evasive on the question, but from where I sat, and for a long time, you're looking at many different combinations. Do you have an interest in Trey Turner? Sure you do. But you have to look at if you sign Trey Turner, what does the rest of your team look like? How are you going where your needs better than anybody because you're saturated in your team, your strengths, your weaknesses, areas you need to upgrade. So it's not a simple question. It's got a bunch of different scenarios attached to it always because you have no control over it. Unless you want to pay somebody, an exorbitant amount of money and just, outbid everybody and go from there. But if you're trying to negotiate the best deal for your team, knowing that a player is going to demand X, you've got to kind of measure that versus your other options and what you can do. Gavin Lux signed as a shortstop, drafted as a shortstop, but moved really to second base. Can he play short? Yeah, I think for a minute or two. Can he play it for 140 some games? I don't know about that, but I think you have to look at a bunch of different scenarios. And the number one scenario, and we haven't even talked about this category on your team, you've got to have pitching. It doesn't matter who you got playing all over the place or how many home runs Aaron Judge has. If you can't pitch and you can't pick the ball up, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So what do you do? What do you do with a guy like?
Oh, go ahead, Rye.
So what do you do with a guy like Rodon? I mean, we've had a lot of discussion about that. He's got arm issues in the past, but he was healthy this year and was a total stud.
Well, again, nobody knows more about him right now than the San Francisco Giants, including their medical people. They know if he's finicky. They know if he's healthy for the most part. They know as much as anybody. So that comes into play. Look, I signed Clayton for a 7-year deal. I know very few people like Clayton Kershaw, both as a talent and as a teammate and as a person, as a husband and a father. I know very few people that check the boxes off that he does. And when I signed him for 7 years, because that was the going rate in the industry for the best of the best, I cringed because you never know with a pitcher. And he had a little bit of a hip issue before that signing and things like that. But he's not somebody that missed a lot of time at that period of time. But just still, you don't know. And when you've had pitchers with arm issues, I mean, it's a tough call. And that's why, and we haven't talked about this either, as part of the equation. How are your drafts? How are your international signings? And how is your player development system?
Right. It absolutely factors in.
That's a huge component.
I'll say this too. On the starting pitcher front, I kind of like the way Farhan played it. I didn't like the idea of giving Gausman 5 years and $100 million, and I don't like the idea of giving Rodon 5 years and $100 million. I'd rather just let those guys keep going down the road and see if I can find the next Gausman, the next Rodon.
Yes.
Give me or I'll pay $22 million a year, but give me a 2-year deal for $44 million. Don't let me dangle for 3 years and get my ownership totally in a, especially if you're one of these teams that's not the Dodgers or Yankees and every dollar literally will be a dollar you don't spend somewhere else. I don't know how you feel about it, Ned, but to me, I kind of like what LA did this year, where they went after Haney and they brought in the lefty Anderson, and they just killed it with numbers. Now, at the end of the year, they might have been asking themselves, well, do we have a good enough ace? Do we have a big enough number one? But I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, I would rather have I'd rather show up in spring training with 10 to 12 viable major league starters, either guys who are graduating to the big leagues, combination of guys that were, I'll take depth of 10 to 12 guys that I think can start at some point over the year over that true number one. I got a one and I'm paying him a ton. I'd rather kind of diversify my portfolio and not lean so heavily on the one pitcher, just because they're all like, hey, he's going great. Oh, got a twinge. And then all of a sudden your career's in doubt and your season's done. And how do you view rotation? How important is the ace compared to the depth?
Well, I think, you brought up two Dodger pitchers who I thought there were two tremendous signings in Anderson and Haney. They were tremendous. And Tony Gonsolin, who's from up that way, pitched great through the All-Star game. So, you can take that chance, and you can kind of shop, and you can get that 1-year deal, 2-year deal, and have done enough homework and enough research on maybe he's got to, tighten up the curveball or have more spin rate or different things like that. But we can't forget that besides when they signed those guys, they had, in my opinion, when he's healthy, one of the best pitchers in the game in Walker Buehler. Julio Urias had won 20 games, and Clayton Kershaw's going to the Hall of Fame. So you already had 3 studs sitting up there, okay?
Plus
Granted,
Dustin May when he gets back to full
but
strength.
it's tougher to do what you said, Lair, if you don't have an anchor or two already in place.
Yep, exactly.
It's tougher to do that. And I'll give you a real life example. And I was, I got into an argument with the ownership at the time and my boss at the time about Greg Maddux years ago. It was the same exact argument. Pay Greg Maddux $5.5 million times 5 at the end of the '93 season, or take that $5 million and sign Juan Guzman and Randy Myers and guys and do it that way. And I'll tell you this, you might have on a scale from 1 to 10, a 9 in a Greg Maddux. Okay. Just because you sign 3 5s compared to the 9 doesn't mean you have 15 compared to the 9.
Right.
You have 3 5s. Okay.
Right.
Not a 9.
Yeah. You got to have 2 guys that, in my opinion, 2 guys that are horses, because, you look at the Phillies, they got Wheeler and Nola, and then you look at the Astros, they got Verlander and Valdez.
But
Rodon's been hurt so much.
Yeah, it's just tough because if you look at the free agency, like in theory, I would love to do what Larry's saying, where you go out and you find the next Rodon or Gosman, but there really isn't that guy on the market this year. And because of that, Rodon's going to command an insane amount of money. But I mean, I feel like they have a guy in Webb who can totally be a number 2. I absolutely believe that, especially with how he pitched with so much poise in the playoffs last year. But it's again, yeah, they got to find another guy.
But see, Ryan, and you're right about Webb, and that's a good place to start. But again, you've got to be able to sign and develop. You got to be able to do that, because if you have Webb early in his career making $800,000, okay, then you got if you're balancing out your rotation and you got two young guys that know how to pitch making $1.6 million combined, gives you all sorts of flexibility. And I just went back, and I know this is really a San Francisco podcast, but you brought up Anderson and Haney. Okay, that's great. And I brought up those other 3 guys. All 3 of those guys homegrown. Okay.
Right.
After Kershaw was my first pick. Julio we signed out of Mexico in 2012. Walker was another. I was gone already. Another first round pick. You got to be able.
They got Dustin May, who's coming back off
Yeah,
TJ.
I mean, there's another one there
he's
too.
Excellent.
So the sexy part of these conversations is who we going to get in free agency. That's the sexy part, but it certainly isn't the most economical part, and it's got the most precarious path of anything any general manager does at any point in time. So what you got to really do is you got to have good drafts, good international signs, and you got to be able to develop.
And then plug and play as you need. The Giants won their World Series because of Bumgarner, Lincecum, and Kane. They developed all those guys, Vogelsong, all those guys, and then they plug in a PV and this and that. That's what they got to do. And
exactly. And a Posey and a Crawford. And a Belt,
Sandoval, and all those guys were homegrown.
By the way, on the Bumgarner front, if Madison Bumgarner, this is a stat I saw today. If Madison Bumgarner pitched tomorrow night, gave up 23 straight home runs, never recorded a single out, he would still have a lower career World Series ERA than Justin Verlander. Wow,
I know.
That's incredible.
I got so annoyed.
That's incredible.
They used to always have those debates, like even recently, and everyone would say, "Oh, if you get one guy, it'd be Verlander." It's like, oh, Pablo. But so my problem though is Ned is like, so okay, I 100% agree. Like everything has to start with the farm, but like, what do you do when like the Giants next year? They're going to be under pressure to win, and maybe it's looking like the farm's not there. Like maybe Kyle Harrison can get up quicker than they're like that's a total, you're kind of flipping the coin there that he's going to be ready to be a stud that early. So what do you do when you don't have those guys coming up? Does it just kind of feel like you just kind of have to make it through the season, or
you struggle? That's what you do. You end up struggling. And just because there's somebody in the minor leagues that you think might be able to pitch in the big leagues, we can never forget how long the season is. Because to have a young pitcher make 100 and throw 170, 180 innings in the big leagues after never being there or being there for a minute the year before, that ain't happening very often.
No, and it's more and more rare every year.
Be realistic with it too. If you haven't drafted well and you haven't made your international signings work and you haven't developed well, you're going to pay a huge price, either on the free agent market or with changing jobs.
Yeah. What's your thought on watching Cody Bellinger? Do you think LA non-tenders him? Do you think they tender him? His name's come up an awful lot, both in San Diego and here in San Francisco, as, man, if LA non-tenders him, could the Giants jump in and sign a guy like that? Give me your evaluation of just where that player is and if you think LA will non-tender him.
Yeah, it's very puzzling to me. Again, somebody that we drafted when I was there. And of all the players at, whether it was San Francisco or LA, that's probably 25 years worth of work, right? Those two places. He was the best minor league player at adjusting, because I would always try and put players in a difficult situation to see how they're going to handle it and if they're going to catch up to the speed of the game or whatever's going on. And he was one of the best that I've ever been around, if not the best, at being able to do it. So I'm puzzled that he hasn't been able to adjust, especially at the plate. And so, you have that situation. I sense, and again, I don't know, I sense that they'll probably tender him, because I think that, he's not that old.
Right.
And so if somebody can unlock this, that's why, maybe the Giant people, or at least the fan base or the media, the group on this call, or they're saying they're going, hey, if they don't tender him, can we get in the middle of this? Because people still believe it's all possible. And even when he had tough years, tough second halves, he had big postseasons. I mean, he is a very, very good player. I'm not sure what has happened. And, I saw him about a year ago. We happened to be flying to the same place. Saw him on a flight, and, and very brief conversation. He knows how to play, and he can run, and he can play great defense. So you can start there. But I think I think I'd be surprised if they didn't tender him. But here again, I shouldn't be saying that because it goes back to your question about Trey Turner. There's a bunch of different puzzle pieces to all of this. How does it work? If you sign Cody Bellinger for 18, 19 million, put him back in the arbitration process with Scott Boras, which is, it's not going to be a cut in pay. So that's 17 already, I think. So you're going to be at 17, 18, 19 range. If you do that, what can you not do? Do you have enough pitching? What are you going to do about the middle of your infield? I mean, these are all questions. I don't have answers to them. I just know that it's a big puzzle. It's like when if you go away for the weekend and you got that 500-piece puzzle that you're going to break out on the dining room table. There's not quite 500 pieces to this, but there's probably 5 to 10. And you got to figure that out. And then you got to lay it out, not just for the 23 season. You got to lay it out. You sign Aaron Judge. How does that affect what we do later? Okay. The Dodgers sign Aaron Judge. How does that affect what they do with Walker Buehler's free agency, Julio Urias's free agency? How does all that work? Will Smith's free agency. So,
yeah, he's going to with Cartaya sitting there. Yeah, what they do with Will Smith could be a very interesting move.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you,
ahead,
Ned.
Yeah. Go ahead.
During the process of the trade deadline this year, the Giants had come out of the All-Star break and lost 7 straight, and they were flailing, and they had been playing pretty bad for months. So it wasn't like, they just went into a tailspin right after the break. They were kind of showing us that they were a 500 team for the previous month or two. They just had a good April. So in the case of Rodon, I was kind of frustrated because I was on this show saying either Farhan needs to go get some more players to make this team to make a run in the second half, or trade Rodon because he's going to walk. You're in and he chose to keep him. And then, he says, well, we didn't get a good enough offer or whatever. Then he also came out and said, we believe in this present team, which now, and most of us who were watching the game could see that nobody believed in the present. I mean, it wasn't a good team, wasn't constructed well, and yet they could have probably got a top 100 prospect, somebody's top 2 or 3 prospect, somebody like the Yankees. They had Velope at shortstop, who was, a guy that the Yankees wanted another ace. I'm sure they would have. Why would you hang on to a guy that is going to walk and maybe you just get a compensatory pick? What's the role in that? I mean, to me, it was just a waste.
Yeah. Well, again, we don't know what goes on in the upper chambers of any organization.
But what would you do? Would you be wanting to, if you were in a situation where you didn't think your team could really take it, win a championship? Who cares about just getting in the playoffs? But win a championship. Wouldn't you try to trade that guy I mean, if he's going to walk in free agency?
I tell you what I would need to do. I would need to really get a strong player coming back.
Right.
At least one.
Right.
With, somebody that could be in the top of your rotation in a couple of years, 1, 2, or 3. Or somebody that's going to hit, play in the middle of the field or hit in the middle of your lineup or be a great leadoff hitter. I would have to get a star prospect. Prospects, like Jimmy Leland said 1,000 years ago, they're minor league players. But I would have to get somebody that is a consensus going to be a really good player, and then probably a secondary piece on top of that. Then I would do it. If I'm just going to get mediocrity back, if I'm going to get somebody else that looks like, a 240 hitter and is going to play 75 games and be back and forth from AAA, I'm not giving any team that stud player in return for mediocrity.
Correct.
So nobody knows what he could have did, Farhan could have didn't do, or whatever. But if there was going to be a big haul coming back, absolutely, you got to make that move because you're not going to beat the Padres and the Giants and the Dodgers this year.
Right, we knew that, and I don't know why. Yeah, it to me it
maybe
didn't seem.
Maybe there wasn't an offer that was strong enough.
Yeah, I just got to believe the market was there.
These guys value the compensatory pick sometimes at a different level, and then sometimes deals just blow up. You might have a deal going, you think you maybe cut off conversations with other teams, and you got a deal that you like, and the other team backs out in the 11th hour, and now you don't have another deal to pivot to just because you don't have another deal to pivot to. So there's that as well. Ned, we could do this for hours, but we don't want to take any more of your time tonight. Good to see you, my friend, and we'll hopefully get a chance between now and the end of the World Series to get you back on in the next week and pick your mind, and then once the names start coming off the board in the free agent period, we're definitely going to love your perspective on some of the deals and some of the talk that's coming out in the hot stove. So we appreciate you, love you, and if you need anything from us, just say it. We're there for you, and thanks for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure. One last thought.
Yeah.
Somebody on this call, not besides me, should keep track of everything they hear about Aaron Judge or any other high-end free agent. Keep track of all the different directions it may or may not go. And then when it happens, we'll go back and research all the BS that flew around, and we never know who the source was. But it'll be interesting. You wait and see. It'll be
yeah. Good stuff, Ned. Have a great night.
Be well, guys.
Take care, Ned Colletti. Stopping by on the Krueg Show. All right, let's pay the bills. We'll come back with some more thoughts after this. Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environment. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, call and make sure you use telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coccimilgio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Tony Cassera and the good people at Cassera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueg Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueg Show t-shirt, the Krueg Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Cassera and get yourself a Krueg Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equaled.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, that life is good.
So New York style sausage was started over 7 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
Welcome back to the New York style Italian sausage Krueg show. Larry Krueger, Dan Coccimilgio, and Ryan Smith with you after game 2 of the World Series.
Wait,
which
that's not Ryan, is it? Is that Ryan?
5-2.
I know. I never have to.
That's Coach Harbaugh. Look at that. He's got the khakis.
You tuck in the sweatshirt?
Oh yeah.
You tuck in the sweatshirt.
What do you got? A bunch of pillows on your hips?
Oh no, it's just that I've got a sweatshirt that's tucked in. No, and I've got the fanny pack. I
You
figured
need
I
the
was
Sharpie. You need the Sharpie.
oh,
You need the Sharpie up here.
I've got
the Sharpie up there. And then you
it's a
need
highlighter. I couldn't find a Sharpie.
Yeah. So yeah, 5-2 Astros get game 2. So it's a 1-1 series going back to Philadelphia, and the Phillies got what they wanted, what they came for, which was the split, and now it goes back. And then of course the Warriors played tonight and lose in Charlotte.
Frustrating loss.
120-113. Just an ugly game for Golden State. They got outscored in overtime, 13-6 in overtime, 27-24 in the fourth. But the big disparity, I guess Golden State came out and had a big third quarter, looked good. And then you look at the box score, man, James Wiseman only played 8 minutes. He did not score. He had 0 rebounds. He had 1 assist. He was a total non-factor. Kuminga played 3 minutes.
A lot of these guys are going to play tomorrow
Jordan
night.
Poole had 24 off the bench, 31 for Steph, was it 11 for Clay, 10 for Loon, 10 for Wiggins, 12 for Draymond. So not a great night for Golden State.
Rolled an ankle at the last minute of the overtime too.
Saw that, yeah. So what's his status?
He's probably off tomorrow. I'm sure they got a game tomorrow night. My guess is they'll sit him and
they got beat on the glass again, and they also had more turnovers. They had 10 turnovers, which is not a ton, but 31 assists, 10 turnovers. They'll take that most times, but they got outboarded again. They got beat points in the paint by 54-48, so minus 6 on that. Charlotte at one point had a 15-point lead in this game, but Golden State wasn't a great performance. You would think that they would be able to beat Charlotte, but Golden State's 3-3 to start the year and 0-2 on the road. What do you guys think of the game?
Carl kind of called this one, so I'm not as the fact that he called it so confidently makes me not as worried. He said, "Oh, I think they'll drop one in Charlotte. They always play bad in Charlotte."
4 years in a row. That kid Richards. Richards, the backup center, man, he was like a monster out there on the boards, and he was just like dominating. They couldn't do anything with him. And
How close are you to pressing the panic button on Clay? Because this is 3 straight horrible games.
Nah, he's just get rounded into shape.
He was 5 of 14, 1 of 7 from beyond the arc, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 11 points, minus 16. I mean, he's having a hard time getting into a flow. I thought he had a quote the other day that showed the humanity, really, the criticism that he's taken from Charles Barkley has clearly gotten to him. He obviously holds, I don't know why so many NBA people, it's one thing for fans, but I don't get why NBA players put so much freaking credence in what Charles and Kenny say. I mean, you guys do realize that these guys, Charles and Kenny, don't watch shit for basketball. I mean, they comment on the NCAA tournament. They don't even know the players at all. They're like looking down at cue cards, and I would say they watch NBA basketball more than college basketball, clearly. But I mean, so what? Just because a guy used to be good doesn't mean that he's like the end all be all on commentary. I mean, Charles is saying half the things he's saying just to kind of get a rise out of people because he knows he's got the gig and he knows he kind of plays that role. But I don't think I would be taking their criticism to near as personal or taking it to heart as much as Clay clearly is. Did you see his quote the other day where he was? Yeah. I mean, he sounded literally bothered by Charles Barkley's commentary.
Well, he was on the set opening night right after the game. They had him on the set on TNT, out there.
But he's just talking, he's just a talking head. He's just a guy talking at this point. And I wonder how much Charles is even watching.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just Clay is more of a guy who's like, hey, Barkley's one of the all-time great guys, players, and he's kind of like he's probably just feels like he said he was hurt. It was just kind of like, dude, I've come back from 2 major injuries. Of course, I'm not the same right now. Why you should know that. You're part of this fraternity. It's not like I'm just losing it because my skills are eroding. I had 2 serious injuries.
Do you see what Steph said? Steph's like, I think there's guys that, talking about Barkley and Kenny that forget what the back end of their career really looked like,
Which also kind of made me like, oh, so is he saying Clay is officially definitely on the back end? I saw a compilation that was interesting. It was like, because I didn't remember Clay ever being this sensitive. And the first time I saw it was like in that Boston game, like he was like all kind of shook up about all the FU Draymonds, and like he kind of went on about like how like not cool that was, blah, 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 and they crossed the line. And then there was like a compilation of like him like in those Cavs finals, when he was younger, mid-20s, and it was like, he was getting asked questions like, oh, LeBron and the Cavs players are complaining about, some of the stuff the Warriors crowd saying and expletives at him, and he's just like, come on, man, it's basketball. Like you talk as much about it. So there's clearly been a change in him where he's feeling his own mortality, and as a result is finding himself a little more sensitive to this stuff.
Well, I think when you go through a couple of injuries like that and then you fight like crazy just to get back and you have such a love for the game, nobody loves the game more than Clay. I mean, there's guys probably equal, but he's right at the top. He loves the game. He just wants to hoop, and he's out there busting. And I personally think he's still coming back. It takes a year, usually 2 years after an Achilles. So I'm thinking that you're going to see a lot better version of Clay in January. He's going to ramp up, and I think he's going to have a hell of a second half. I really do. I see him being one of the better players on the Warriors.
I mean, the bottom line is he's probably, I mean, it's, it would not be shocking if he was, forever diminished. because those were when the knee injury, okay, maybe some guys come all the way back from that, but the knee and the Achilles, it's like he was going to be diminished. And the question was, what was it going to look like? And now we're seeing it. He's not quite, this dogged, determined defender.
He shot 39% though in the finals last year or in the playoffs. From three.
Yeah, it's funny though. It's like, it's weird. It's like sometimes you can kind of tell when it's not going to go. It's like he forces it now. He just seems like he doesn't always have his legs under him.
He's out of rhythm.
He doesn't. There's certain kinds of shots that just look really low percentage.
He's taking shots and dribbling and doing stuff that we didn't really see him do before. And I have no doubt that he's now turning into that stage of his career where, during the regular season, he may not be that same guy, but in the big spots, I still think he'll come through.
Yeah. They just couldn't throw it in the ocean. They were 13 of 44 from three. Clay and Steph shot 4 of 20. 4 of 20 from beyond the arc. So, in that way, if those two guys shoot 4 of 20, you throw in Poole. Poole was 4 of 11. So, you got 8 for 31 for those three guys. That ain't going to cut it. But I'm a little surprised. I didn't watch this game because I was watching college ball and I taped it. But Kuminga and Wiseman not getting any minutes. Does that surprise you guys tonight?
Yeah, it was just a performance thing, I think.
Yeah,
3 for Kuminga, 5 for Wiseman.
I think Wiseman and Kuminga play a lot of minutes tomorrow in Detroit. It's back to back. They're they got to have some guys that have something left in the tank.
I mean, this Charlotte team didn't even have LaMelo.
No. Or Bridges.
You get beat by Charlotte without LaMelo? I mean, Kelly Oubre led the way. He had 18. Hayward had 23. PJ Washington had 31.
One time he hit a 3 over by the Warriors bench, Kelly Oubre, and he turned and looked at the Warriors bench and smiled real big. And I don't know if he was pointing at Kerr or somebody, but he was kind of like,
I never liked Kelly Oubre. I didn't like Kelly Oubre when he wasn't a Warrior. Didn't like him when he came to the Warriors. Don't like him now that he's a former Warrior. I don't see the specialness of Kelly Oubre. I don't see anything really special about him. There were people that were just talking him up, like, oh my God, like he was some player of significance. He's just a guy. He's just a guy running around out there. He's well paid, but other than that, he's just a guy. You guys wager on any college football today?
Yeah, I did.
No.
I did an 18 parlay.
Oh, Jesus.
Really?
Guys, I'm sorry to do this, but I got to jump. If you guys want to continue talking college, totally cool. I'll be listening, but I'm just at my buddy's house and I feel bad.
No problem.
Pull the trigger on that trade, Ryan.
Okay.
So I can change my couple of my guys for
Danny's just throwing fantasy trades left and right.
We'll
let Ryan get on with this night.
So here's my 18 parlay. I actually took a kind of a different strategy today.
Now, did you go with spread? Would you tease?
No, I just took the straight the money line. I did not. I just took the overwhelming favorites, and then I tried to. I got to see if I won because a couple games are still going.
So I did the same
now.
thing. We basically did the same thing. I hit the other night on Utah over Wazoo to the under. Right, it was 21-17, and I got like under. I mean, it was like I think it was under 60 or something like that because I teased it up and then went under. And then I had Utah -1. So Utah just had to beat Wazoo. But then no Cam Rising, the great young quarterback for the Utes, was not playing. So I tuned in. I was like, oh, my God, Rising's not playing? And I didn't realize he wasn't going to play. But I covered that bet. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to go with a 7-team money line parlay. So this is what I went with today. I went with UCLA over Stanford. They're up 31-6.
I
went with Georgia over Florida. They beat them 42-20. I went with Ohio State over Penn State.
That was the one that was scaring me. I was going to do it, and then I I decided not to because I was afraid like I might.
Well, you were right for a while because Penn State led in the fourth quarter, but it was 44-31 the final. Buckeyes get the win in Happy Valley. I took Michigan in the Big House over Michigan State.
One. Yeah, you did what I did.
I took K-State over Oak State in Manhattan, Kansas, and it was 48-0. Deuce Vaughn had a huge day, 22 carries and 158 yards and a touchdown. Deuce Vaughn is scary. But and then I took SC over Arizona. That covered 45-37, though Arizona hung around.
What's going on with San Jose State? I took San Jose State and Boise State tonight, and I also took Houston and Minnesota. I think mine was like
San Jose State is tied with Nevada 21-21 at the end of the third quarter.
Oh, gosh. They were like huge favorites.
21-21.
Minus 4,300.
Yeah. Well, the one that I took was that ruined it for me is I took Sam Hartman and Wake Forest ranked 10th in the country on the road against Louisville. And Sam Hartman had the worst game of his. I mean, they did. Wake Forest had one of the ugliest games I think I've ever seen. They lose 48-21. They turn the ball over, Danny. Wait for it. Guess how many times?
8.
8.
Oh my goodness.
They turned it over 8 times. They were minus 7 in turnovers.
Oh my
8
goodness.
turnovers. 8.
That's unreal.
8 turnovers. I mean, I don't know that I've seen a team with 8 turnovers in a game. Sam Hartman threw 3 picks. They had a pick 6. I went 6 for 7 on my money line parlay and gagged on Wake against Louisville.
How can San Jose?
I mean, that just hurts. That just hurts. That one, I mean, it wasn't going to pay tons because it was mostly favorites, but it was going to pay like 3.5 to 1, something like that.
Mine was, my strategy was today. I put 40 down just to win 35, and it was like nothing big. And so I thought 8 teams, and I thought I'll take 10, and I put it on Cal for an upset. I thought, just 1,600 to 1, it was like plus 1,600 or something like that. So I was like, I'll put 10 down to win 160. And of course, I was thinking I thought the 8 teams is a lock. Now I'm 7 for 7 in San Jose State.
Oh, you might cover. You might cover.
I mean,
San Jose State, they'll probably win. They're at home, aren't they?
Yeah, that's why it took them. They're at home.
Yeah, they're at home. And UCLA's taking Stanford apart 31-6.
And I was going to take UCLA or USC, but then
I've been fading Stanford most of the year.
Yeah.
Stanford just is. But Gilbert Arbalo says that game was an easy over. I still think Sam Hartman is a first-round prospect. I don't know if you saw this, if you go back to that Wake Forest game. Wake Forest was doing this. They did it, Dan, they probably did it 5 to 7 times in the game. It's amazing. They go read option handoff, Sam Hartman to the running back. They hold the mesh point and start walking towards the line of scrimmage. So it's like almost like a Statue of Liberty where the quarterback drops back to pass, takes the ball and puts it in the running back's gut, right? Mm-hmm. But they literally started walking. I'm not talking about running. I'm not talking about jogging. I'm talking about quarterback handing a ball off to a running back, and then the two of them with the ball in the running back's gut and still in the quarterback's hand. They're walking slowly to the line of scrimmage while the play is going on. I've never seen it. I saw Wake Forest do it 4 times today, 5 times today. Every single time it got snuffed. It's like you can't, it's like I get it. You're trying to freeze the linebackers, but if you're not going to pull the ball and throw it, you're just kind of walking with the running back as everybody starts pursuing the running back, and the running back never had a big run. It was It was
I'm
the strangest play fakes I've ever seen in that Wake Forest game. I mean, it's just like, do you guys really think this is going to work? I mean, I never. It didn't work once all day, and they did at least half a dozen times.
You know what struck me today is watching Penn State, Ohio State, when either team would go into hurry up, how fast they could get plays off. Like, I'm talking like run a play, get a first down, stop clocks, and they're snapping the ball within 10 seconds. And I'm like, how in the world can the 49ers not get into a hurry up like that? I mean, college football coaches and players are more adept and more skilled at running the hurry up than I've ever seen the 49ers. It's unbelievable.
49ers have struggled mightily with tempo. Mightily.
Yes, mightily.
They don't look like they can go up tempo at all. And then you saw the breakdown. I saw you comment on it on Kurt Warner. I mean, that was a good breakdown, because it just kind of shows that, you know what, these people that show one play or two plays and then try to draw conclusions from one or two plays, it's disingenuous. It never really is revealing of the true nature of what the point they're trying to make. It's always a snapshot when a movie was required. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like, I'm going to show you one example of player X doing this, and then I'm going to extrapolate this as this is the evaluation of that player. But I thought Warner's breakdown was better, because Warner showed several plays. He showed plays where he felt like the route combination was a poor route combination. He showed a play where he felt like the receiver didn't run the route crisp enough or correctly. He showed one where he felt like Garoppolo didn't. Oh, wait, let me turn this off. No. He showed one where he just felt like Garoppolo didn't see it. And he kind of showed what he saw and what Garoppolo didn't see. He had a couple like that. He had one where he really didn't like, Kyle's play call. But I mean, there were several things that show kind of anecdotally why the 49ers passing offense specifically, is out of sync. And I thought it was a solid representation across the board of exactly what's wrong, which is you've got receivers who are running the wrong route. You have Garoppolo who doesn't see the field. You have Garoppolo. Sometimes you have bad route combinations, and you have multiple guys in the same spot. We've seen that more than one time this year. And sometimes your Garoppolo doesn't see it. There's times where Kyle wants him to see it, and it's all made for him to see it, and he just doesn't see it, or he sees it late, or he's just inaccurate with the ball, or, like, even just people don't realize that you can complete a pass, and you could, the play could be designed to have gone for 80 yards, and you could complete the pass and it could go for 8 yards, and it's still a completion, but you screwed up the play because you didn't hit the receiver in stride, or you didn't throw it on the right side. And not every play is schemed to go the distance, but there's 4 or 5 plays that, each half that probably are. And if you're not hitting any of those, or if you're completing the pass, but that play's winding up as a 5-yard gain when it should be a 50-yard gain. It's like we only really see the errors of commission. We hardly ever see the errors of omission. We hardly ever see, hey, you know what? The play was set up, for Garoppolo to find Ayuk on the wheel route, and he found him on the wheel route, but he underthrew him by 5 steps, and so he got a 40-yard completion, but it should have been a 80-yard house call. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
so there's all kinds of different things. But I thought if anybody gets a chance, go watch the YouTube film review that Kurt Warner did, because I thought it was nuanced, and it didn't necessarily draw any one conclusion, but I think by showing it for what it was, it kind of showed that there's several things where this offense is just a little bit out of sync here, a little bit off time there, a little bit inaccurate with a throw there. All these things add up to, why the 49ers are struggling so dramatically on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, and as I listened to it and watched the whole thing, the thought that kept running through my mind was Kurt Warner would make an excellent head coach. I just think he's just got command. He's able to communicate well, and I mean, he played it at a Hall of Fame level. His breakdown was so tedious, and man, you got to think that I don't, with his situation, who knows with his family situation, but
there just aren't that many quarterbacks. I mean, if you really look at what quarterbacks make, how many NFL ex-quarterbacks who made $20 million a year are actually coaching?
Right. I mean, there's not.
Are there any? I
don't think there's any. I mean, Harbaugh didn't make that much. Peterson was a backupp for.
You're probably never going to see
it.
I mean, it's like if somebody's making $20 million a year, guess what? They don't want to have a loose relationship with their children and a casual relationship with their wife and work 120-hour weeks. It's just
crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. No, I mean,
it's like it's too bad too, because now that means that a lot of the best players who would a lot of players who would be great coaches never find their way to coaching because the hours, the lifestyle and the hours just don't mesh.
Yeah. Tomorrow your guy in preseason got called up, Tay Martin. So he'll with Debo out, and it looks like Jennings is out. They called up Tay Martin and also Snead. So you're going to have Tay Martin.
We'll see who's up tomorrow. They can only have 48 up.
I guess it's going to be. I'm thinking it's going to be in the receiver room. It's probably going to be Ayuk and Ray. What do they usually carry a game day? 4 or 5?
Well, it really depends. I mean, it depends if they were trying to carry an extra D lineman. Sometimes they load up on the line of scrimmage, especially if there's injuries. It's hard to say. I mean, I love Tay Martin. I think Tay Martin is a tremendous receiver.
He's got I saw some stuff on him that somebody posted on Twitter. His route running is unbelievable.
He's got great hands, got great ball skills. He caught 3 balls in the bowl game last year against Notre Dame. They call him Big Play Tay. He's really good in the red zone and in short areas.
Well, he's probably taking Jennings
down the field. He's going to disappoint you. He's going to disappoint you. He's not a burner. But he's got great ball skills and great body control, and he's got good size. He's about 6'3". So, if you throw him the ball in the end zone, he's going to catch it. He's got really good hands, and he's a very productive receiver. If you're looking for him to separate down the field,
Danny Gray healthy? Danny Gray healthy?
We don't know. Probably not. I mean, he's a little dinged up, I think. I'm not sure exactly what his injury is.
Or what?
He's dinged up. I think Ray's dinged up. Debo's not going to go. Ayuk is the guy that probably has a big day. And I would imagine Bosa has a big day too against Alaric Jackson, who's making his first start at left tackle for the Rams. I think Bosa probably feasts on the left tackle Jackson in this game, but this can be a very challenging football game because the Rams, their season's dangling, and there's also the trade deadline coming up this week in the NFL. There's a lot of talk about the Rams being interested in a number of guys.
Hearing Jeff Wilson's maybe on the block.
That to me makes no sense that they would trade Jeff Wilson, considering how thin the running back position is and how quickly they lose players at that spot. You're going to get rid of Jeff Wilson, but who knows? Maybe Jeff Wilson wants out. I don't know, though. I mean, seriously, what's more valuable to you right now? Jeff Wilson as a depth piece or a 6th round pick?
Oh, I'll take Wilson because
Yeah,
I'm not
I
worried
would
about
too.
the 6 pick. Now, if you got maybe a decent role player, you never
See, I
hardly
think
see
at
that.
best you're going to get a late day 3 pick.
Yeah, that's all you're going to get.
So why do it?
Yeah.
The big question is, if you're the 49ers, what do you do? Like, do you try to make a deal? Do you try to go after? There's a lot of talk that Dante Jackson, the corner for Carolina, that they may go after a trade for Dante Jackson. I mean, the two areas where I think the 49ers need to be kicking tires on everybody in the trade market is D tackle with Kinlaw out, maybe done for the year, Armstead out, maybe done for the year as well. You're thin at defensive tackle, and then at corner. I mean, if you could add another solid veteran cover corner, not an elite guy necessarily, but just a solid veteran cover corner, I'd do it, because that's a spot where, you have Verrett, but how long's Verrett going to last? A week,
Right.
2 weeks, 3? So it's hard to say, but D tackle and corner, I think are spots that if I'm the 49ers, I'm looking to make a trade. Now,
Yeah,
some people would say O-line, but I think O-line might be
They did
more
bring
of
up Ty McGill off the practice squad too to the 53.
Yeah, that doesn't move the needle for me.
I know he may be plugging and playing a little bit tomorrow. Who knows? I'm just kind of curious what they're going to do because, if they got a lot of those key guys out, to me, it's close to a must-win game as there is. Are they?
There's a lot of talk to
to
Rams, by the way, who might try to bring back Brandon Cooks in a trade. And if Brandon Cooks gets traded again, he will tie the NFL record with Eric Dickerson. Both of those guys will have been traded 4 times in their career. Wow. NFL trades are rare. To be traded 4 times in a career is just
you're definitely amazing. More likely to be cut more than 4 times than traded 4 times.
Traded 4 times in your career? I mean, in the NFL?
Yeah, why is that, Larry? Why do you think there's not that many NFL trades?
It's a great question. I don't know. It's like teams just say we're just going with what we got. I know there's a belief in the NFL that if you trade player A from the Seahawks to the 49ers, that it's going to hurt the 49ers more when that player leaves than it's going to help the 49ers when that player comes. So it just kind of speaks about how continuity is so important. One thing I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you saw this, but Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, was on Mad Dog Radio on Sirius XM. And he says the ghost runner and the extra inning rule is likely going to stay. He said the clubs like it, the players like it. He says, I think overall the fans like it. I think it does bring sort of a focus to the end of a baseball game in a way that has been positively received. I don't know. I mean,
as long as it's not in the playoffs, which it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the point, when you're going in, it's 10:30 at night, and then all of a sudden, you're entering into the 10th inning, and you're thinking, oh, geez, this could go past midnight. To me, I would rather them see him start it in the 12th inning.
I would too. Let him play. Seriously,
play 2 innings.
Play 2 or 3 innings.
Play the 10th and the 11th.
I would do it after the 12th. I'd go after 12. After 12, let's do it. Until then, I'd rather not do it.
Yeah, I mean, they got to put it. I think next year, this pitch clock thing is going to be very interesting. A lot of guys are going to have to change their game. If there's nobody on base, the pitch clock is 15 seconds, and the batter has to be in the box ready at 8 seconds. Joey Bart, after every pitch, adjusts his batting gloves. He takes them off like this, and he does this, and he gets, you're not going to be able to do that next year. I don't know why.
And there's several guys like that. Did you see Christian Vasquez last night for the Astros?
Yeah.
He's doing the same thing.
And these guys, next year everything it's going to change. I mean, these guys should be getting really changing, especially in September. I thought guys might try they knew it was already coming. Guys that were out of it, why don't you start working on making some changes that you're going to have to for your career? Why make those changes in March in spring training when you only get 30 at bats. Do it for the whole month of September, teams that were out of it. I'm surprised that, as particular, as supposedly as prepared as Gabe with his 35 coaching staff, and why he didn't have those guys, preparing for next season, because it's going to be an adjustment for guys. I mean, if you've done this, whatever you do after each at bat or after each pitch, and you've done it since you were 10 years old, and now you're in your 20s, that's a hard habit to break.
No, I know. It's funny. When I coached Little League, I just had one rule. My one rule was you can't step out of the box. You got to keep 1 foot in the box. That was my rule. Yeah. You want to take a step out of the box to adjust to your this or that, take a practice swing, whatever, fine. Do not take both feet out of the box. Keep 1 foot in the box at all times. Commit to the at bat. Because little kids, they don't. There's no rhyme or reason to it. They just start stepping out because they're nervous. They got an itch, so it's like if you just say the rules, hey, this way it's going down, and then it's better for them. Calba donates $10. He says this will be the last game without Elijah Mitchell, assuming everyone is healthy after this game, with CMC, Ty Davis Price, Jeff Wilson, Jordan Mason. They may have to go. One may have to go before Tuesday. Who would you deal? Mason? No, I wouldn't. Well, I wouldn't deal Mason. I guess I would deal Jeff Wilson. I guess I would out of that group.
And you got Tevin Coleman, who's on the practice squad now.
They got Tevin Coleman on the practice squad.
Yeah. So.
I guess I would deal Jeff Wilson, but I will say this: Jeff Wilson is a popular guy in the room. So that's going to be kind of an unpopular thing if they do wind up trading him. Poupon Boy says, is anyone going to mention how Dusty Baker lost a 5-0 lead again? We did. We mentioned that. In fact, go back to the beginning of this thing, and Ned Colletti had a very interesting, some very interesting 2 or 3 answers there to, comparing game 1 of this World Series to 2002 Game 6. Calba says, I hate the ghost runner rule. Yeah, I do too. And then Eddie says, I got nothing better to do at midnight. I'll watch an extra inning game with no ghost runner anytime. I hear you, but they're trying to make it more palatable for the people in the stadium and so on and so forth. But just, to me, it sends the totally wrong message.
Plus, what, Larry?
It shows how lame baseball is that they allow themselves to, don't send a message that it's better to have less of your product.
Right.
I think it's always a bad message anytime you're saying, hey, we're going to limit our product and it's going to be better. We're going to give you less of our product and it's going to be better. It's kind of an indirect statement that our product sucks. You know what I mean? It's like our product's dry, our product's boring, our product, and I don't think that's a statement I would want to make.
I think the whole thing of doing it in the 12th or 13th inning would be the better answer, because I'll tell you, during the regular season, especially with this Giants team this year, there's some boring 9 innings. I don't want to watch him for 14 or 15.
I hear you, but I will say this. Almost all of the people that are the biggest, most bored people, they're the people that work there. I don't know that I've ever gone to a baseball game where I've walked out of the game going, man, I would have loved this game if it had just been 20 minutes shorter.
Yeah, but I mean the Giants. I'm talking about the Giants in general. They were boring.
But I'm just saying the players and the managers and the media, these people are all getting paid to be there. So they're at work, and none of them get paid per hour. So they're all getting paid per game. So they want to go home. And that's why this is such a slow drumbeat of momentum, because all these people want to go home. The announcers are for it. Why? Because they want to go home. The players are for it. Why? Because they want to go home. But guess what? Little kids that are going to a baseball game, when you're walking out of the stands, nobody ever, I mean, I never did. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I never walked out of the Giants game thinking, I just wish the game had ended a half hour ago. I mean, never. I mean, literally, maybe on the coldest night at Candlestick and a blowout situation in the 80s, some random cold, freezing cold night, maybe there was one game in there where I was like, but I can remember several times walking out of the game going, God dang it. I got ripped off. Big Daddy pitched an hour and 52 minutes. Billy Swift had a 2 hour and 5 minute game. I feel ripped off. We got here in the second inning, and before I even got a hot dog and a beer, it's like the game's over. I felt more times robbed by not having enough action compared to feeling, oh, this sucked. We were here for an extra half hour. I don't know. I always looked at being at the ballpark as fun.
I mean, I'm a purist, so it would be hard for me. But this new generation, I guess, with their attention span not being that high or great, they want everything over quickly. That's the whole reason.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I get it.
Would you want to see something like where the 12th inning they do they go to the Manfred rule? After playing the 11th and 12th, and then after 2 or 3 innings, it's still tied. Would you want to see something like a home run contest like hockey does?
No. I
don't either.
I don't want a home run contest.
I've heard people talk.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't mind is something like this. You play 9. If it's tied, you play extras. Extras are just extras. For 3 innings. So you play 9, then the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th are just like the regular game. You play 3 innings. Then in the 12th, you want to put a runner on first base, go for it. In the 13th, you want to put runner on first and second, go for it. In the 14th, you want to put the bases loaded, go for it. Then I'm okay with adding a runner on first base, then adding a runner on first and second, then adding a runner on first, second, and third.
That would be kind of interesting.
And then from that point on, just start every inning with the bases loaded. You know what I mean? Like, so you once you go, so the 12th, you're playing regular, 13th man on first, nobody out. 14th inning, man on first and second, nobody out. 15th inning, on bases loaded, nobody out.
Yeah,
that's okay. So I mean that's crazy and wild, but it's not wild until the 13th. You know what I mean? Doesn't that seem more?
Yeah,
that seems more like
live with that.
a real game.
That'd be pretty exciting in the 15th, bases loaded. Nobody.
Yeah. Eddie goes, Danny, you're lazy. You're lazy with the home run contest you suggested. Oh,
I didn't suggest it. I was saying I heard it. I was just throwing it out there.
How dare you suggest that? All right.
I like
you got a final thought on this one, Danny? I mean, Astros, I like the Astros to win this series. I think they're the better team. I think the better team will win out. Usually the team that wins game 1 has gone on for a really high percentage of World Series, series wins. But Philly got game 1. I know Philly's got magic and this and that, but I just think the Astros are better. I think the Astros are more talented. I think the Astros are not going to be bothered by Philly. I like the Astros to win game 3 and take control back.
I mean, the Phillies rotation's getting a little weaker now that you're getting down to 3, 4.
I like the Astros pen more too, don't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they were able to not really use much of it tonight, so that was good. So now those guys are going to be really rested. I like the Astros, and then as far as Warriors, I'm not really concerned that much about regular season Warrior games, but I will say this: the Warriors, their transition defense right now sucks. They don't really stop anybody in transition. And the more I watch this team, the more I think, man, they really do. They're gonna miss GP2. He just was such a dominating on the ball defender. And a rebounder and a scorer inside. And now they lost that one player, and it's like now they're all 3 areas. They're not quite as good. They're not quite the defensive team. They don't play transition D. They don't rebound as well. They don't score in the lane the same way. I do like Jermichael Green though. I think he's going to be. And they're missing DiVincenzo out there in the rotation with his, it's a long season, and I think they're probably going to be right around that 50 win mark. I mean, I could even see them ending up outside the top 4, 5 or 6.
Yeah,
because
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because it doesn't really matter. Right. At the end of the day, the Warriors could win the finals out of the 5-hole easily.
Yeah.
And also once you've won the title, you play for the title. And once you're playing for the title, you're really everybody else is trying to win games. And what are you trying to do? You're trying to make sure that you're playing your best ball in May.
I think they'll probably try to, ideally they probably want that third or fourth slot just to get
the home court,
home court in the first round. And, then you can end up getting it in the second round. What did they end up with the home court all year last year, right? They kind of lucked out because Dallas upset Phoenix and, they didn't have it against Memphis. No, they had to go they didn't have it against Memphis, but they did against Dallas.
What do you like anything in the NFL tomorrow?
Yeah, I think if I was picking a survivor, if my survivor pick, I had who did I tell Ryan to take? Because he's still in his. I trying to remember my lock pick would be.
Malik Willis is playing for the Titans in Houston against the Texans tomorrow.
Oh, I think Dallas would probably be the biggest lock tomorrow.
I kind of like Seattle at home against the Giants, giving 3.
Kind of going to pull for the Giants in that game because of the Niners division. I don't see the Giant. It's going to be hard for the Niners to probably catch the Giants with their one loss. So I'm going to pull for the Giants to go. What are they? 5-1 right now, or 6-1? 6-1. They haven't
6-1 against the Seahawks, who are 4-3.
I'm going to pull for them to go 7-1, and have the Seattle go 4-4. Niners win and hopefully win and be back in control of the division.
It's a tough slate of games for sure to wager on. There's a game in London tomorrow. Broncos Jaguars. Jaguars are a 2-point favorite. Broncos. There's a rumor out that if the Broncos don't play well, they may dump the head coach Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, early first year head coach.
Oh my goodness! Nevada and San Jose State are tied up at 28 to go with 6.5 minutes. Come on. I tell you. Oh, wait. That's no, wait. Yeah, 28-28. 28-28. They were, what were they favored by? Like 20 something?
Yeah. No, San Jose State was a big favorite.
Jeez.
Yeah.
At home, you can't.
It's that West Coast football. West Coast football. You just never know. You just never know.
I'm going to have to turn that one on and watch the end of it.
All right. Hey, tomorrow we've got Niners Rams. Who do you think wins? You got a pick on that one? The spread's even. It's a pick 'em.
Yeah. I'm going to say the Niners somehow pull it off. I don't like the Rams this year, but they're going to be up and they're coming off of a bye, so it's not going to be easy. I just think something has
Graves
to happen.
says San Jose State's down 7 with 6:30 left. Is that true?
I'm showing 28-28. Unless I'm looking at the
Let's check that. I'll look for all the.
I got 28-28 with 6:29 left. Unless
that's what I got too. That's what I got too.
I think San Jose State just scored. That's why.
Let me refresh. My score still says 28-28.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see on that one. But Fresno State, San Diego State, also very close. 28-25, San Diego State on top. UCLA's putting Stanford away. It's 38-13. Wyoming, Hawaii at halftime on the island, 10-10. Halftime score. Could you imagine if you're on the East Coast watching that game?
Yeah,
it's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. It's halftime. You're sitting there. What? What the hell?
It's 10 minutes to 2 on the East Coast. So
Could you imagine
in like 3 o'clock on the East Coast?
Oh my
honey,
God!
What'd you do? I stayed up and watched Hawaii.
Gilbert says Dallas, Buffalo, and Philly. I don't know, but I don't know about Buffalo. Buffalo against Green Bay. They're just going to smoke Green Bay. I don't know.
I don't know. Green Bay looks.
Green Bay does look bad.
Could you imagine if, whoever the 49ers or the Rams loses, if they'll be 3-4, right? Rams are 3-3, right? No, they're 3-4 right now.
Yeah, 3-3 and 3-3. Niners are 3-4.
Yeah, that's right. Rams are 3-3. So imagine if the Packers, the Bucks, and either the Niners or the Rams are under 500 after tomorrow. I mean, three of the favorites. I mean, going into the season, it was the Rams, Bucks, and Packers. Everybody.
Well, the Bucks already lost this week. They're
3-5. I know. Everybody was talking about those three teams, and the Niners were in that mix too. But
there's a lot of speculation too. I saw somebody speculate that the 49ers would trade Jeff Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo to Tampa for Brady.
Where's that? Where are you hearing that from?
I just saw it. It was maybe on Twitter. It wasn't like anybody major. It wasn't like Schefter or anybody.
I mean, I wonder if Brady
would the Buccaneers trade Brady to the 49ers? Would the 49ers trade away Jimmy Garoppolo for Tom Brady? They, at this point, Brady's 45, may retire at the end of the year, but Garoppolo's kind of, he's done at the end of the year too. I mean, he's walking at the end of the year. I mean, he has a no trade clause, so he gets to okay
do that deal. I'd do that deal, but I don't know. I just don't know where Brady's head is. I mean,
would you rather take a chance with Garoppolo or Brady the rest of the way if you're the 49ers? If you're Kyle Shanahan, you're trying to win the Super Bowl this year.
I'd go with Brady.
You go with Brady, even though he doesn't know your system, even though your system's complex, even though he's not the leader in the room. Yeah. Garoppolo is, I mean, it's
all depend on how fast
he very dramatic.
How fast could he learn the system? Maybe he can't. Maybe he can't learn it in 9 weeks. That is a hard thing to learn a completely different system.
I mean, if it works, you'll be hailed as a genius. If it doesn't work, you're going to be the guy who, you had Garoppolo there and you upset the chemistry by going for Brady and taking the leader out of the room. And, I mean, it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I will say this. They made a commitment to go for it this year when they traded for CMC, that it's like now they're all in on this year.
Right.
They're absolutely all in. So,
yeah, I think the better fit for this year would be Aaron Rodgers because it's pretty much the same offense.
The only thing is, I don't think you could get Aaron Rodgers away from Green Bay without trading Trey Lance.
Yeah, I'd still do it because
you would do it.
Oh, Rodgers
for Trey Lance?
Yeah, because I think Rodgers.
He's 22 years old or whatever.
But I think you can get 2 more years out of Rodgers after this year.
Wow.
I think.
Would you trade Trey Lance for Cousins?
I'm not a big fan of Cousins.
I'm not either. I like Cousins, but he's never really won big games.
I mean, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not.
So it's like, what are you pointing to? It's hard to go the Cousins route. Ramos family says, let's hope that they trade Jimmy G.
Yeah, Dusty Gold says it's Kyle's show, not Brady can't coexist. It's kind of tough.
Who knows? Maybe that could be some truth to that.
It's kind of tough to get a quarterback who doesn't know your system in mid-season. I mean, Jimmy came over here the last 5 games in 17, and he didn't even – he had no clue, what was going on. He was just playing street ball and looking pretty good. But Rodgers could do it because the terminology with Green Bay, LaFleur's from the Shanahan tree.
The whole thing is if you brought in Tom Brady and he started being really critical of your route combinations or your plays or whatever, that's going to make you look bad as Shanahan, because Brady's got all the rings, Shanahan's got no rings, and it's like if all of a sudden he's like, hey, he just has a couple quotes would be all it would take for the bloom to be off the Kyle Rose. I don't know. I don't know, but I do think that is interesting. Tomorrow's going to be very interesting for the Niners because, have they had the Rams number? Yeah. But now they're playing in the Rams' place. There's some desperation there for the Rams. Both teams need this game really badly.
I expect the Rams to be coming out pretty fired up because they lost and they coming off of a bye. They're going to be the fresher team. It's not going to be easy.
Stop Cooper Kupp. They haven't been able to stop him at all the last 3 games.
It'll be interesting to see if Verrett's up tomorrow or if he's just going to be, not part of the 48. They did call him up, but to the 53 so at some point they believe he's going to be able to contribute. But is it tomorrow or is it in a couple of weeks? After the bye.
And how long before he goes down? That's the other question. And then also I'm eager to see Mark Graves' SoFi 49ers home away from home. Yeah, I'm eager to see that too. How many Niner fans crush into that place, and does Stafford have to go silent count again in his home stadium? Should be interesting. All right, Danny, we'll talk to you tomorrow after the game. Maybe we'll do a little live stream after Niners-Rams tomorrow night. I don't know if you're around, but when's World Series Game 3? Not till Monday?
Not till Monday. What do we you got your show with the London Talk
we'll do
Sports
we'll do a pregame show from London. We'll do a pregame show tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. with Low Neal on 95.7 The Game. So catch me tomorrow at 11 a.m. with Low Neal on 95.7 The Game. Well, then we'll do a postgame show on Talk Sport in London. And then when that is over, we will do a postgame show tomorrow night on the channel of Niners Rams. So it should be, and hopefully you'll be there. Hopefully Rye will be there. We'll break it all down, talk a lot of 49er football.
When are we going to do that? About 7 or so during Sunday
I would say, let's see, it's a 1 o'clock game. Yeah, probably around 7 o'clock, right around 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Right around the third quarter of Sunday Night Football.
Absolutely.
Very good.
All right, Danny. We'll see you there.
Never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle.